Chapter 1. Nothing about this is new. Narrated by time. I have been present longer than your explanations. I was there before you learned to name yourselves, before you learned to measure me, before you decided I was moving forward instead of simply continuing. I have watched you discover fire, law, gods, money, reason, and doubt. I have watched you abandon each of them the moment they became inconvenient. You often speak of novelty. You are fond of it. You use it as proof of advancement. You say things like this has never happened before, as if surprise itself were evidence of importance. It is not. I have seen every version of what you are doing now. I have seen it arrive with different tools, different accents, different moral banners. I have seen it defended with better words each time. But the behavior beneath those words has remained remarkably consistent. Pain, you believe, evolves. It does not. Only the permissions around it do. You are correct about one thing. Your suffering feels new to you. It always does. Consciousness is narrow by design. If you could feel the full weight of all suffering at once, you would not function. You would not build, reproduce, compete, or endure. So you are given a smaller window. You mistake this limitation for uniqueness. From my perspective, it is repetition. Every generation insists it is more aware than the last. This insistence appears whenever tools improve, when communication accelerates, when information becomes abundant. You confuse access with insight. You confuse vocabulary with restraint. You say you know better now. I have heard that sentence before. I heard it when violence learned to call itself order. I heard it when exploitation learned to call itself opportunity. I heard it when exclusion learned to call itself tradition. I heard it when indifference learned to call itself realism. Each time, the speaker believed it sincerely. I am not suggesting you are lying. That would imply intent. More often, you are convinced. Conviction is one of your most reliable blindfolds. You like to believe that history bends toward improvement. This belief comforts you. It allows you to inherit the benefits of past cruelty without sitting with its implications. You tell yourselves that what came before was necessary, unfortunate, regrettable, but resolved. It is not resolved. It is refined. Patterns do not disappear when named. They adapt. They wait. They learn which justifications are acceptable in a given era. They learn which words will be applauded and which must be hidden. They learn how to wear concern while doing harm efficiently. I have watched you condemn acts loudly while replicating them quietly. You reserve outrage for what no longer benefits you. You reserve empathy for what resembles you. You reserve memory for what flatters your image. This is not malice. It is selectivity. Selectivity is how you survive socially. It is also how you excuse yourselves morally. You often ask why people before you behaved so cruelly. You ask how they could not see what was obvious. You study their actions as if blindness were an individual flaw rather than a shared condition. You do not notice that you are doing the same thing, only with better lighting. I have watched crowds condemn injustice in unison while standing comfortably inside systems built on it. I have watched people demand accountability from others while carefully explaining their own compromises. I have watched language grow sophisticated enough to hide violence from those who benefit from it. You call this complexity. I call it continuity. When you say we didn't know, I remember how often you chose not to ask. When you say we had no choice, I remember the choices you dismissed too quickly. When you say times were different, I remember how eagerly you adapted when advantage was offered. Time was not different. Your incentives were. You believe that cruelty requires hatred. It does not. Hatred is inefficient. Most harm is done calmly, administratively, politely, with forms, with processes, with reasons that sound reasonable. I have seen entire populations harmed without a single raised voice. You imagine that monsters create suffering. This comforts you because it allows distance. Monsters are rare. You are common. Suffering follows the common far more reliably. I have seen ordinary people do extraordinary damage while insisting they were only doing what made sense at the time. That phrase appears in every era. It made sense at the time. It always does. That is the problem. Sense is local. Consequence is not. You measure yourselves against ideals rather than outcomes. You ask whether your intentions were good, not whether your actions were damaging. You look for alignment with principles instead of alignment with reality. Reality, unlike principles, does not negotiate. You will read this and feel the urge to locate yourself on the correct side of it. That urge is immediate and strong. You will want to say this is about them, wherever them happens to be most comfortable. I suggest you resist that urge. I am not speaking about villains. I am speaking about participation. Participation is rarely dramatic. It is often quiet, procedural, justified, and rewarded. It happens when you remain silent because speaking would cost you. It happens when you benefit indirectly and decide not to trace the connection. It happens when you call complexity what is actually convenience. I have watched you do this long enough to recognize the moment it begins. It is always the same moment. It begins when introspection threatens advantage. At that point, curiosity slows, questions soften, memory shortens, and certainty returns, reassuring and firm. You mistake that certainty for maturity. It is not maturity. It is closure without resolution. I am not accusing you. Accusation implies moral theater. I am observing you. Observation does not require your agreement. Nothing about what you are experiencing is new. Not the fear, not the ambition, not the rationalizations, not the quiet discomfort you feel when something here sounds uncomfortably accurate. That discomfort is not an attack. It is recognition. Recognition is rare. Most people pass through entire lives without allowing it to settle. They are too busy distinguishing themselves from the past to notice how closely they resemble it. You may continue reading, or you may decide this perspective is unfair, cynical, or incomplete. I have seen both reactions before. If you continue, do not expect relief. If you stop, do not expect exemption. I will still be here. I always am.